Today on NewsWatch, the U.S. continues to weigh options in dealing with North Korea over its nukes. What the president is saying about a major conflict.
Because it's almost the same thing, except for heroin's just stronger, and it's cheaper, and it's more available, which is the scary part.
Plus, 3/4 of all heroin addicts started with prescription painkillers. Hear what's being done to fight the epidemic and why churches are being called on to help.
Grace and Lace has taken the boring sock that women wear under their boots, and we've turned it into a lacy, frilly fashion statement.
And see how God used this couple's pain and turned it into a booming business. Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Mark Martin. President Donald Trump said Thursday a major conflict with North Korea is possible in the standoff over its nuclear and missile programs, but he would prefer a diplomatic outcome to the dispute. Dale Hurd has the story.
In a propaganda video that looks like a low-budget 1960s action movie, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is seen reviewing more military maneuvers. North Korea's UN mission says the government will react to a total war with the United States with a nuclear war. President Trump told Reuters, indeed, there could be a war.
There's a chance that we could end up having a major conflict with North Korea. Absolutely.
China's foreign ministry has refused to confirm or deny Secretary of State Rex Tillerson's new claim that Beijing has threatened to impose more sanctions on North Korea if it conducts further nuclear tests. China is North Korea's largest trading partner and its main source of food and fuel.
We've put in place a very deliberate strategy, which we are just in the early stages of executing, and it is one that does involve bringing significant pressure to bear on the regime in Pyongyang. It also involves calling on China to play a role in how we deal with this threat.
Tillerson will speak on the showdown with North Korea when he chairs a special meeting of the United Nations Security Council today. The senior U.S. naval officer overseeing military operations in the Pacific says the crisis with North Korea's Kim Jong-un is at the worst point he's ever seen.
And it's clear that his goal is a nuclear weapon and the means to deliver it to the United States of America. Is there any doubt in your mind?
There is no doubt in my mind, Chairman.
Secretary of State Tillerson says the U.S. is not seeking regime change in North Korea, but wants a full denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
President Trump's 100th day in office is Saturday. The day might come without the House passing a health care overhaul or the passing of a budget, which would finance the government for the rest of the year. It looks like the government won't be shut down, though, for at least the next week. Lawmakers prepared a bill which finances agencies for 1 week while they work to pass a $1 trillion package that would support the government this year. Faith groups and Christian businesses had hoped President Trump would reverse the Obamacare mandate that requires employers provide birth control to their employees. But the Trump administration has not signaled what it plans to do. Christian business owner David Green of Hobby Lobby sued to keep his business from having to follow the mandate and won. Yet, because it hasn't been repealed, he says it may face more legal battles.
You know, I think it's all going to come down to the Supreme Court eventually. That's where most of these decisions are going to finally be made. So for us, it's really getting a Supreme Court that is pro-family, pro-faith, and will allow us to have our religious liberties.
Conservative pundit Ann Coulter was a no-show at a protest in her honor at Berkeley yesterday. Her canceled appearance at the university brought hundreds to peacefully celebrate the conservative, while they called her cancellation the latest blow to free speech. Many dressed in protective gear adorned with pro-Donald Trump stickers anticipating violence. The confrontations were not large due to a strong police presence. Coulter thought about making a visit to Berkeley despite her cancellation, but did not appear. Benny Hinn Ministries has released a statement after federal agents raided the Texas headquarters of the ministry Wednesday and were seen taking boxes of documents away. Benny Hinn Ministries says it, quote, is cooperating fully with the governmental entities that are reviewing certain operations of the church. The ministry has undergone intense scrutiny over the years, and we remain confident that there will again be a positive and speedy outcome in the days ahead, end quote. A federal source told Dallas TV station WFAA that the raid was the result of a lengthy IRS investigation. New research reveals that Americans love the Bible, but not enough to read it. A Lifeway survey found that while most households have at least 3 Bibles, only 53% of Americans actually read them. CBN's Charlene Aaron spoke with Christian author and apologist Josh McDowell about why we aren't reading the good book.
Josh, what do you make of these survey results that Americans say they love the Bible, but less than half actually read it?
It's very similar, the Lifeway study, to the Barna study, almost identical, which shows that it's true. I think probably there's three or four main reasons that a lot of people don't think about, and it has to do with the information glut, the introduction of the internet. Let me show you what I mean. The average adolescent, this is average adolescent, takes in 34 gigabytes of data every 24 hours from a moving screen, which means if printed out, it would equal 4.5 million pages. The brain of millennials and younger, it's overloaded. And as a result, it's creating a tremendous intellectual skepticism. When people came out with the internet, everybody's saying, oh, wonderful, it's going to add such certainty, data, evidence, information. And I kept saying, no, it'll add the greatest intellectual skepticism ever. For example, you go even to a Christian young people group with me or to a middle school, high school, college campus. Doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not, and you make a dogmatic statement about the Bible is the only word of God or Jesus Christ is the only Son of God. Almost always you get a response like this. Well, how do you know that's true? There's so much out there. Tomorrow they could discover something different. As a result, the Bible is becoming less and less important as a source of data or information about life. And those are two of the reasons that we're having a shift away from reading the Bible. But look at this one. One of my staff, she has a 13-year-old daughter. And the youth pastor was trying to get her to study the Bible more, do her homework, do her research and all. And this was her response. Now think of this. Why should I have to study the Bible? I can Google anything I want. You get it?
Wow.
That's what's happened with the information that we get from the internet.
It's amazing. Well, Josh, if we call ourselves a Christian nation, but don't read the Bible, what does that say about us?
Well, one, I'm not sure I would call myself a Christian nation. I think we've shifted from what Francis Schaeffer said was a post-Judeo-Christian culture. We have now shifted in to an anti-Judeo-Christian culture. And what you mean by Judeo-Christian culture is that your ethics, your morals, your perspective of life would stem from the Old Testament Judaic and the New Testament Christian. We're now in a culture of anti-Judeo-Christian.
And you can see the entire interview with Josh McDowell at CBNNews.com. Coming up, opioid addiction is sweeping the United States. Still ahead, CBN News investigates what's being done to fight this epidemic. An estimated 91 people die every day in America from opioid overdoses, although the real number is probably much higher. Opioids are types of drugs that include heroin and its chemical cousins, prescription painkillers. As Lori Johnson shows us, this widespread epidemic is especially bad in the heartland state of Ohio, which has 11% of the nation's heroin deaths.
Ohio police discover a 4-year-old with his grandmother and her boyfriend both overdosed on heroin. Scenes far too common these days, especially in America's rural areas. Heroin is transforming wholesome small towns across the Buckeye State. For example, here in Marion, one of the hardest hit areas, police responded to 12 heroin overdoses in just 3 days. Matt Gossard fought a heroin addiction for 5 years.
And the drugs, they just completely deaden any emotions that you have. I turned to crime. I turned to anything I had to do to get the drugs. I started selling drugs.
Like 3/4 of all heroin addicts, Matt's descent started with prescription painkillers.
Because it's almost the same thing, except for heroin's just stronger, and it's cheaper, and it's more available, which is the scary part.
Ohio Attorney General Mike DeWine created a specific heroin unit to take on this epidemic. He says the drug no longer comes from faraway places like Afghanistan.
A number of years ago, the Mexican cartels decided to grow the poppies there. They process it down there. They turn it into heroin. They bring it across our southern border, and they bring it into Ohio and into other states.
The desire for the ultimate high has led to even deadlier concoctions, including the synthetic painkiller fentanyl and elephant tranquilizer carfentanil.
We'll see sometimes in a weekend one community where there'll be 5, 10, 15 people die.
DeWine wants education on this problem starting as early as kindergarten. He's also gone to Ohio's church leaders for help.
The programs that work, the treatment that works, many times has a faith-based component part to it.
Matt can vouch for that. After a number of failed attempts, the Christian Treatment Center finally made the difference.
I believe that Jesus Christ is the only answer. I believe that there is no other answer other than Christ.
He now leads a Christian recovery ministry that works with the Attorney General and pastors across Ohio to ensure each church in the state offers an addiction specialist.
There's somebody in every church in this state that has been affected by addiction, I guarantee it.
Here at the state capitol in Columbus, officials are clamping down on where many believe heroin addiction starts, in the doctor's office. Now, physicians are only allowed to prescribe 1 week's worth of painkillers or risk losing their license to practice medicine. The law only applies to short-term pain relief, such as the kind following surgery. Before, doctors would often prescribe enough for a full month.
We had a number of pharmaceutical companies that developed pain meds, and they were pushing those out, and they were telling the doctors, these are not very addictive. Turns out they are very addictive.
Doctors can still prescribe painkillers for people with chronic or long-term pain, but is that the right treatment? Dr. Vibhor Krishna, a neurosurgeon at the Ohio State Medical Center, says they can cause memory loss and constipation.
These pain medications are not that effective if you take them long-term. Plus, what it does is it inhibits the body's internal pain control systems.
Dr. Krishna recommends non-opioid pain relief, including surgery, acupuncture, steroid injections, weight loss and exercise, heat, and an anti-inflammatory diet high in vegetables, low in sugar. Still, pain meds are extremely common among the 100 million Americans with chronic pain.
It was constant. It was all the time. I never had any time without pain.
Despite her chronic back pain, Andrea Flannery refused to take opioids.
It's too easy to get hooked on the pain medicine. I know a lot of people that have, and it destroys your life.
Instead, Dr. Krishna implanted a small electrode on the surface of her spinal cord. It receives pulses from a little pacemaker, therefore blocking the pain impulse.
A typical patient would be someone who has had back surgery before, are still having back pain and leg pain, and are taking a significant amount of pain medications.
Most patients with stimulators experience some relief, about a third pain-free.
It's been night and day. It's been wonderful. I don't even really notice that I have it in. You get used to the feeling.
So while the heroin crisis rages, people are fighting back with awareness, Christ-centered treatment, and minimizing pain pills. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Up next, see how this couple used a whole lot of grace and a little lace to create a booming business. Welcome back. The show Shark Tank pairs entrepreneurs with business moguls who can provide the expertise and funds to make dreams come true. But as you've likely seen, it isn't always easy to get the shark's approval. For the Texas couple behind the brand Grace and Lace, they knew when they went into the tank they would be just fine. Ephraim Graham sat down with the Hennants for this week's Studio 5 interview.
Grace and Lace has taken the boring sock that women wear under their boots, and we've turned it into a lacy, frilly fashion statement.
Rick and Melissa Hennant were season 5 contestants on ABC's Shark Tank.
Yeah, but we came in with a strategy and we knew who we wanted. So it wasn't indecisive, not at all.
I'm going to revise my offer. I'm going to change the offer to give you exactly what you asked for.
They left with a deal. 7 years later, the Austin couple run a booming business.
Let's see what they're up to now.
We always knew that Barbara would make the perfect partner for us.
Not only has she given us incredible advice, she has opened up incredible business opportunities for us.
What you didn't see on the show is the painful story behind the knitted socks.
Start in 2010, you married, find out you're expecting a child. What happens? Take me back to that.
About halfway through the pregnancy, I was at a routine doctor's visit, and suddenly the doctor looked at me, and I could tell something was wrong.
Just from the look?
Yeah, and she said, Melissa, you're going to give birth to your little girl within 24 hours, and she's not going to survive. And I was rushed into emergency surgery. Rick was actually out of town, and they wheeled me right from the doctor's office in a hospital bed straight into emergency surgery. And the doctor said, well, we'll do all that we can to try to save her, but chances are very, very slim. And if she does, if the surgery is successful, you'll remain in the hospital for the duration of the pregnancy, so 4 months.
Do you make a conscious decision that you're not going to be upset or angry, or what happened?
I think I was determined not to let fear set in. Knowing the timeline of 4, potentially 5 months of laying like this in the hospital, I had to keep my mind positive. I had to keep focused.
To keep busy on bed rest, Melissa picked up a hobby, knitting.
I started with a vision to make this baby girl blanket. And that's how time went past for me. Things started to take a turn for the worse. Everything was going great. We had no doubt. I mean, Rick and I were so full of faith. We just saw this as really just a hurdle. You know, our story is going to be a little bit different. And this girl, baby girl, is going to come into a world with a story that's a miracle testimony, really. Until that night, when, I'm sorry, my water broke, and the doctors came in and said, at this point, there's nothing else that we can do. We can't save her, and she'll be born too early to survive. And she was. I had little baby girl, Hallie, short for Hallelujah, and she was perfect, but just too little to make.
I'm curious, what were your prayers and conversations with God like?
You know, I'll never forget Rick coming into the room after Hallie was born, and looking at me and saying, Melissa, we have a decision to make. We can either be mad and bitter at God and wonder, why would a good God cause this to happen? Or we can choose to believe that somehow something is going to come from this.
What happened with the blanket that you started to knit for Holly?
I still have it. Just tears shed over that yarn, over that fabric, and God just really speaking me through it. You know, I felt the pain of struggling as a first-time mom, of, you know, my body failed to create this baby girl. So I felt this, well, I can still create with my hands. Something still can come from me that's gonna bring life. Now, fast forward a couple years, her baby sister, which is now our oldest daughter, Sienna, uses it on her bed.
In terms of making things with your hands, that's now your life's work, it seems. So let's get to the beginning of that. So you get out of the hospital and you're knitting socks for yourself? What happens?
One day I wanted to make a pair of socks that had lace on the top of them so they'd stick out of the top of my boots. I come up with these crazy ideas. Okay, so I had this. I knew I could do it. It took me 5 hours to figure out how to do it. In fact,
7.
I promised him I would never make another pair again in my life.
Melissa also posted a picture of her socks on social media.
And I'm like, man, okay, these socks are getting some attention. So my entrepreneurial husband, who's the smart one over here, was like, why don't you put them up online and, sell them? So I did without quite thinking through what possibly could happen. They sold instantly, and in a matter of 3 days, we had over 500 purchase orders for this one pair of socks.
Wow.
That took me 5 hours.
People that had already paid us. We could obviously refund everyone, and that would be totally fine. Or we could figure out how to do it. And I think God's instilled in us how to figure out things, how to get over hurdles.
They put their heads together and created Grace and Lace. Without a cent on advertising, their sales jumped from hundreds to thousands. 3 months in business, they felt God wanted them to pitch their company on Shark Tank and aim to partner with Shark Robert Corcoran. 2 years later, they land a spot on the show.
You go in and you are offered exactly what you asked for, but you don't accept it.
It's really interesting. When we filmed, we were in there for an hour and a half.
Okay.
And within the first 10 minutes, Barbara gave us an offer, but she only gave us half of what we wanted. The next shark, Kevin O'Leary, he wants to do the deal, not with Barbara, just with him. And I was stalling as much as I could with the other sharks.
And they were getting frustrated.
Very frustrated. It got heated in there. But we weren't going to be swayed because we wanted to do what we felt like God said to us.
Absolutely.
And just like God, in the very end, after an hour and a half of back and forth and intensity, Barbara said, you know what? I'm going to change my offer. I'm going to give you the full offer.
Yeah.
And
done, finally.
Oh, my goodness. We were elated, absolutely elated.
You certainly lost one child, but your family's still grown. You guys have how many children now?
3.
Yeah, I think this journey has taught us that God has so much more in store that we can't even imagine. And He's better than we can imagine.
That is so true. God takes care of His children. We'll be right back. News of Aaron Moran's death on Saturday at the age of 56 quickly spread as many Americans fondly remembered the former child star who played Joanie Cunningham in the sitcom Happy Days and later on Joanie Loves Chachi. For those wondering about her faith, CBN News found reports of Moran coming to Christ after Facts of Life star Lisa Whelchel, who played Blair, told Moran about Jesus. Moran died from stage 4 cancer. Her husband, Steve Fleischman, says he held her hand as she passed away. It's never too late to accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior. Well, that's it for now on CBN NewsWatch. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. Have a great day. Thanks again for watching. Take care.